your head around a lot, okay? But they're really useful, and of course they're not. But that's essentially what we've done with social media. We're going to squeeze this down. This immense flood of information will be filtered through this tiny little grid, and that'll actually be quite useful. And it has turned out to be. Again, this is sort of one of the predictions that are difficult to make in science. One of these things you can't really get. So it's one of those things that kind of arise spontaneously out of usage in a way. Well, obviously somebody thought of it, but it's one of those ideas that wasn't obvious until you already had the idea of the internet. So inventing things from the ground up is still very hard for science fiction writers because the internet is a lesson, cell phones are a lesson in how hard it is to invent these things. Because they've got all these funny angles and uses that we never guessed at.
Yeah, because you can't just invent MacGuffin, you've got to invent the technology that allowed the MacGuffin to be made. So
and then you've got to think about how people use that technology as well, which is not obvious.
They'll end up probably using it in a way that wasn't the plan originally.
No, that's right. Yeah, I mean, I bet cell phones are not really phones anymore, are they? Really? I don't know why they call them cell phones. You don't use them very much for calling people. People are walking around poking at them and so on and so forth, and developing interestingly new curvatures. The species will evolve with thicker necks, vertebra, and well, actually, the wiring in your brain changes when you have to use keypads. So we're rewiring ourselves through technology. This is one back to why I find science fiction interesting, back to the human life. I know the reason I found it interesting, well, because I was a kid in the 60s and technology was really important in the 60s. It was really optimistic and fantastic, and everything was really wonderful. It was all Apollo, moon landings, we go on to Mars, 2001 was showing us the way. We could build these power stations, nuclear power stations, the electricity would be so cheap we wouldn't need to meter it. All this kind of thinking was there then. So technology was a big drive, social drive. It's a big driver now. So maybe
coming back. You get the flavour of that later again.
Yeah, but although I just read I just found an article by Twitter, which is kind of depressing article about how actually the technology we have now, there's nothing really new about it. The last really new thing was invented about 1974, which is when this golden age, which was just after the war, right up to about 1974. I'm not quite sure why it's 1974, but I'll go back and read the article, try and figure it out. That was a golden age of invention where brand new stuff was invented. What we've been doing since is refining stuff and actually making it mostly smaller and faster. Computers are smaller and faster. But there's nothing new, because we had computers in the Second World War. We had television before the Second World War. BBC had television before the Second World War. We had lots of stuff. We had antibiotics. We had antibiotics developed during the Second World War, and so we've got different antibiotics. We haven't got better antibiotics. Maybe some of the genetic stuff is new, and I can't think of this new stuff. This guy was the biologist. The guy who wrote the article was a biologist. I can think of some stuff.
I'm going to say because I think that's where. Yeah. Because I think one of the big things that you see a lot of people moaning about certainly in the science fiction community, and I think to some extent in the science community as well in the US, is this idea that we've kind of lost that edge. But the point, the interesting thing is that all that stuff that's very exciting and interesting is going on at the infra level. It's small and it's inside us and it's biological. And I think what's really missing here is a very old-fashioned male kind of, big rockets.
This is not coming from Gibson.
Well, no,
starting with Gibson, we fall in the mud, I think.
Yeah.
And we never, Interstellar is saying this, the movie of Christopher Nolan, in the beginning.
Well, going back.
But not about Gibson.
It's
saying that we fall in the mud and we don't look at the stars.
But it's not true, is it? Because we are. I
don't think so, because in 2010 we were supposed to be on Mars. This was discussed in 1983. And the travel to Mars, it was supposed to be done by the two enemies' power.
Yeah.
Soviet Union and the USA. And the Soviet Union's clock crashed, and the travel to Mars is lost
I don't think it's lost. I think it's just we've reassessed, because the thing is, the vision, this vision is a golden age vision, and it's this idea of rocket ships in much the same way as merchant ships in the age of discovery. And what we've realised is it isn't going to be like that. You know, people, oh, the space race, but we're in space. I mean, we've landed on a comet. I mean, there are so many probes on Mars. There are rovers on Mars. So many. We're going to have to start having parking spaces allocated. You know,
because Mars is the only planet entirely inhabited by robots.
And the only thing that seems to have changed is there's a realisation that, well, we're not going to go ourselves, at least not for a while, because you know what? There's no need. You know, our IT, our computer technology is developing so much faster than our space-going technology, and it's like, why on earth would you send some poor bastard to Mars when hopefully we're going to be able to build machines that can go and do it instead? I mean, it's like saying, why aren't we still digging coal out of the ground 5 miles down with people? It's like, well, because actually we've got machines that will do it now, and we try and minimise the amount of harm that we expose people to. And it's, you know, for some reason, I think it's tied up with this high frontier mythology that the Americans suffer from. There is this, somehow, as soon as you talk about getting out into space, we forget about all the things that you apply, you know, to mining, to undersea work, to anything that's in a hazardous environment. Whereas, where the constant thing is, let's see if we can take humans out of the equation so that they're not exposed to risk. I mean, look at warfare technology. Everything America is developing in terms of warfare is, let's get the soldiers out of it. Let's get it done by machines. Let's get the soldiers protected. Let's take them far away from harm. And suddenly, with the space age, it's like when, you know, the space race, it's suddenly, no, we've got to have the guys, they've got to be out there, they've got to be landing on the planets. Why?
Because it's inflaming. You said before.
Because it's inflaming?
Yes.
Yeah, because it's...
Because, yes, people are thinking...
The basic hero.
Yeah, I want to be the space hero of my youth. Yeah.
The basic problem during the space race went like this: no Buck Rogers, no bucks.
Yes.
But then hopefully that option, that perspective changed with the end of the Cold War, and I think as far as 20 years ago, Bruce Sterling wrote an article called Outer Cyberspace, in which he pointed out that basically by means of smart machines we were going to send to explore the whole solar system by telepresence.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the whole point is that, you know, probably terraforming Mars is not a bad idea, probably. So the way to do that, surely, is you go, right, we send a bunch of machines, we leave them to get on with it, and in a couple of 100 years, they go, how are we doing? Okay, it's baked, it's done, take it out of the oven.
In a couple of 100 years, they say, go away, puny humans, Mars is ours.
Well, this is
Earth now, and we're going to turn it into Mars, because you know what's the best?
We love the environment
Mars,
there,
yeah. So there is that problem.
I'm afraid we have to stop here on Mars.
Oh,
it's a good place to stop.
Stranded, yeah.
Before doing that, I'd like to ask Mr. Hauriga to tell us a little bit about Paladin's collection and also about the new book that you are launching here in Romania, the new book.
I'm very sorry, but I really don't dare to torture the beautiful English language. So with your permission, I speak in Romanian. Would you translate for our guests?
A little bit, yes.
Yes.
Just
Okay.
please do, because our interest is to promote the towards our Romanian audience.
Paladin a apărut acum 2 ani, are fix 2 ani de când am lansat prima carte. La Gaudeamus în 2012 a apărut o piatră pe cer, Pebrul Investar, de Asimov. Acum o să încheiem anul cu a 23-a apariție, deci cam 23 avem. Urmează să mai apară 2 sau 3 acum, în săptămâna viitoare, celelalte 2 cărți ale lui William Gibson, ca să primim trilogia. Neuromantul deja este pe piață. Vom face un eveniment să marcăm cei 30 de ani de la apariția romanului Neuromantul, 30 de ani de cyberpunk
We'll have a
de care
public event to celebrate 30 years since Neuromancer came out on the market. They'll have the original Cyberspace trilogy out on the market before the end of the year. And we'll have to celebrate something like 30 years of Cyberpunk. It will take a few years.
So we can stay a few more days.
That sounds like a great
To have one
idea.
next week, so.
Just 1 week.
Or come back for this. Yeah, we'll come back for the.
Sperăm să avem și China Mayfield,
We also have to have
de
China Mayfield over in Romania.
până la sfârșitul anului, deci 23 de cărți.
So that will be 23 books.
Ce să vă mai spun? Avem portofoliul Paladin, înseamnă 33 de autori.
Paladin said that involves 33 authors at this point.
Și vreo 70 de titluri,
And about 70 titles in our portfolio.
din care vreo 10 sunt deja traduse,
Out of which 10
lucrăm
have
la
been
ele.
translated already, and we'll see about the others.
Am obiceiul ca la fiecare prezentare de genul ăsta să mai spun un nume de autor nou pe care l-am luat în portofoliu. Cred că n-am spomenit, deja asta vin nou pe celei Vineri.
We've established something about China Mayfield, this team Romania.
De ce ați ales pe cei doi
Why
Okay,
have you
but-
chosen these two authors specifically tonight?
L-am ales pe Richard Morgan în 2006.
Ever
Aia
since
tot eu am ales în
2006.
România.
I was the one who first commissioned this translation in Romania, back then.
Deci, reiau relația pe care sper să o avem întemeiată
We'll pick up the
Richard Morgan.
relationship again. Hopefully we'll have a long-term relationship for publishing purposes.
Da.
După,
Răutatul o să facem o traducere mai succintă, mai rezumat, că nu mai avem timp. Îmi cer scuze.
deci după Omul negru urmează trilogia Takeshi Kovacs.
De ce ați ales?
Îmi place mie. Nu am obiceiul cu Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk o să aplicat atunci în 2006, era proaspăt, în 2002 a apărut prima carte a lui. Am avut aceeași senzație atunci când am citit pe William Gibson în 87. Și atunci a fost așa un fel de crash care a rămas. Iar Paul McAuley pare unul dintre cei mai buni scriitori de space opera contemporani. Un nou fel de a scrie space opera și cred că